Okay.
So our topic for today will be Backdrop CMS as an upgrade option for Drupal 7 websites. And our speaker for today will be Tim Erickson from Triplo. And I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes.
Okay. So before we begin, I kind of want to talk about Drupal for Gov. Most of you all know who we are, but for those who don't, we are a community of open source advocates, and we love all things open source. So in addition to this monthly webinar that we hold every third Thursday, we hold a conference, Drupal GovCon. We haven't had one in person for probably 2 years. We're hoping to plan one, hopefully for 2024. We also do the global training days, the half training days, and I'm excited to say that we're actually planning one for April next month. I'll share more information about that a little later. And we participate in the Gov Summit at DrupalCon North America. So if you're interested in presenting, you have some space that we could use for a half day, please reach out to us. We are available via email, Slack, and Twitter. Also, so as I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in hosting, please reach out. We're always looking for space so that we can have such engaging content as we're going to have today. Also, if you miss a webinar or a Drupal Gov session, DrupalCon session, or a Drupal webinar session, check out our YouTube. And also, we update the webinars on our Drupal for Gov website. I'm excited to share that we'll also be in person April 18th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. We will have 4 companies presenting and providing information about content. So our topic or our theme for that day will be all about content. And some of our speakers will be from 1CRM, Teodi, Creative, Palladian Partners, and Debug Academy. So I'm excited about that, and I hope you all pencil that in and put it on your calendars. And last but definitely not least, I'd like to introduce Tim Erickson. He is the co-founder and owner of Triplo. He's also the member of the Backdrop CMS Project Management Committee and involved in the Drupal 7 Soft Landing Initiative. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
So
go ahead.
I'm stopping sharing and you can.
Okay, and well, I have done this before. For some reason, it always surprises me here when I there we go. Just a second while my screen settles down. There we go. Okay. I wanted to see the chat, have the chat open here as well. So I think everybody can see my screen. Actually, can I confirm that? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, we've got the back, and hopefully the backdrop CMS slide. Okay, I'm using a slightly different slide tool here today. Hopefully that all goes well. I understand I'm going to get a little bit of help moderating questions. It's okay if you, I guess we're asking questions primarily through the chat. And I'm going to get a little help managing that in case I miss anything. I will try to keep an eye on that. I'm happy to answer questions during the presentation, or we'll be sure to leave some time afterwards. So again, my name is, let's go. So who am I? I'm Tim Erickson. I've been working in the Drupal community for a little over 12 years. I've been a contribution mentor. I've been very involved as in the community, contributing and using Drupal. I've been in over 25 different camps, including one Drupal GovCon. I've been involved in the Backdrop community for a little over 5 years. So I was not a part of sort of the original fork of Backdrop. We can talk just a little bit about that later. I joined later, but have become very involved. I am the founder of my company, Drupal. Here's where you can find me. For the last several months, my primary social media platform of choice is Mastodon. So if any of you are Mastodon users, you can find me there. We also have a chat platform called Zulip that we use. If you and that's the link to the Backdrop chat channel. You can find me there a lot. I am also available in Drupal Slack at St. Paul Tim. And Triplo is my main company site, and Simplo is a site that we have built. I'm going to do a quick this is kind of an experimental site for people that want to kind of get started with Backdrop. And it's really kind of in an alpha stage. People can play around with it if you want. I'd love to have feedback on that. My company is Triplo. We're a small web shop. We are located in northern Minnesota. I work with the team in Bangladesh as well. We focus on Drupal, Backdrop, CMS, and WordPress. We're also really excited to be finishing our first kind of phone app project, which is going to be a nice directory of RVing campsites in national parks. Going to be pretty good. And of course, we're the builders of Simplo. Why are we here today? To talk a little bit about the Drupal 7 end of life and upgrade options. I don't think that I can see like hand raising, or can I? How many people have, if you can, either in chat or raise your hand, if it's possible with the Zoom feature, do you have a Drupal 7 site that you're still managing or concerned about? Drupal 7, in theory, reaches the end of life this November. As hopefully most of us are aware, that date has already been extended at least twice. That got us to 2023, and there's the option that the community may decide to extend it even longer. Why? Because almost half of all Drupal sites are still currently reporting. Half of the sites reporting Drupal.org right now are still using Drupal 7. And the community doesn't want to leave that many sites with an unsupported platform. Why so many Drupal sites still, or 7 sites still? In my opinion, that a lot of it is just inertia. The Drupal 7 is a solid platform. It works, and a lot of sites are just they don't need a big change. And as long as the community supporting the tool are going to continue using them, the costs of upgrading from Drupal 7 to modern Drupal are pretty high. And by the way, I'm going to be using this term modern Drupal. Some people in the Drupal community have started a discussion about this Drupal 7 or 8, 9, and 10, like it's getting cumbersome, referring to everything after Drupal 7 is something. And some people are throwing around this idea of just modern Drupal. And for this presentation, I'm going to talk about that, Drupal 7 or modern Drupal. Building sites with modern Drupal requires an entirely new set of skills and tools, and that's part of the reason for Backdrop that we'll talk a little bit more about later. But the reliance on sort of different coding practices and the composer workflow in particular, we run into a lot of people in the Backdrop community who have tried to move to Drupal 8 or 9 and got hung up on the composer workflow, which they're just not used to. This is particularly true of people that are maintaining their own site, or very small developers that are just working with a couple of Drupal sites, and they haven't really invested in learning the current workflow and tools for Drupal, modern Drupal. And a lot of the Drupal 7 sites that are out there just don't need the complexity of modern Drupal. They're kind of happy with what they have, so they don't see that, they're not going to reap any benefits of new features in modern Drupal. And so they're having a hard time justifying that large expense moving to Drupal, modern Drupal. Why is it important to upgrade? Well, hopefully that's obvious to most of us here, which is that there will cease to be security updates for Drupal 7 once the end of life is officially reached. The reality is that we're already there for a lot of contrib modules. A lot of contrib modules have quit getting support. I don't know if any of you that have Drupal 7 sites have run into this, where all of a sudden modules that you've relied on for a long time are marked as unsupported, and you're getting little warnings in your admin screen saying that this module is no longer supported, you should delete it, which isn't always easy if you have an existing site. So support for Drupal 7 is really already disappeared in the contrib space. While we are still getting security updates for Drupal 7, that will be ending soon. We don't know for sure if it'll happen this November. When they announced the release last year, they said that the community would reevaluate on a year-by-year basis. It was last March that they extended the end of life target, or actually last February. So we're already past the date where they made that decision last year. I've heard no official communication on whether or not they plan to do that again this year. A friend of in my introduction, we talked about the Drupal 7 soft landing initiative. This was based a little bit on a blog post I wrote about a year ago, talking about that while I'm involved in Backdrop, one of my motivations is helping some of the small websites that the modern Drupal has kind of left behind, and helping them find a soft landing. Where can they move to that's going to be safe and secure? A colleague that's also involved, Irina, who really helped found the Drupal 7 soft landing initiative. This is a group of people. There's a page on Drupal.org talking about the Drupal 7 soft landing initiative, and I like what she said. The Drupal 7 structure is no longer seismically sound, despite looking strong from the outside. And she said our priority right now needs to be help folks safely exit the building and find a suitable, and I added an affordable new home. And so part of the Drupal 7 soft landing initiative is just that, is some folks in the Drupal community finally realizing that not everybody is a suitable candidate for modern Drupal. And not every Drupal 7 site is, and some of them are going to need alternatives, and we need to start helping people find them, whether we can get them into modern Drupal or get them into something else. The important thing is that the community doesn't want to keep supporting Drupal 7. It's a burden on the community, and they'd like to get people moving on. So what we're going to talk about today is one alternative. It's not the only alternative. Obviously, modern Drupal is going to be a great alternative for a lot of people. Many of you probably already done that. My own company, we're a development shop. We have moved some of our clients to modern Drupal and some of them to Backdrop, depending on their particular needs. We'll compare a little bit about Backdrop CMS and modern Drupal. Going to talk a little bit about the Backdrop community and its core values and principles, and a little bit about how you might some things you might factor into deciding on whether or not your site is more suitable for Backdrop or modern Drupal. Of course, I'm not mentioning other alternatives. I've seen a number of my Drupal 7 clients go on to WordPress, or even some of the proprietary systems like Wix or Squarespace, and sometimes that's totally appropriate if it's just a simple brochure site. Very often I'm seeing Drupal 7 sites that had bigger ambitions when they started and have sort of become very simple brochureware sites, and they just don't need modern Drupal, and to some extent some of them don't need Backdrop either. And we'll mention a little bit about some of the tools and resources for helping upgrade to Backdrop CMS. So what is Backdrop CMS? Backdrop CMS is a fork of Drupal. There's a number of, I see at least 2 or 3 or 4 members of the Backdrop community that have joined us today. If any of them can, feel free to help answer questions in the chat if they want. I'm forgetting right now when the fork was, but I think it's been about 7 years since Backdrop was forked from. We originally said it was a fork of Drupal 8. It was really kind of a fork of Drupal 8 right before Composer came in. And we've quit referring to it as a fork of Drupal 8, though, because it's confusing. It's much more like Drupal 7 than it is Drupal 8 in many ways, particularly from a sort of a developer point of view. However, it's been modernized. We're adding new features all the time, and well, we'll look more at that. So it's very much, if you like Drupal 7, Backdrop is very much like that, but enhanced. A key point I want to make is Backdrop was founded by and forked by people who love Drupal. Most of the people in the Backdrop community continue to work with Drupal sites. Many of us prefer working with Backdrop when we can, but we recognize, but we've been using Drupal for a long time and we continue to use it. We still participate in Drupal events. I still go to Drupal camps and Drupal cons and consider myself an active member of the Drupal and Backdrop communities. Basically, for those of you who aren't familiar with how forks work, when they forked Drupal 7, they basically just took the Drupal 7 code base and it sort of froze it at a point in time. And well, the Drupal 8 development continued to go in one direction. The Backdrop development just went in a different direction. Here are some of but we did include a number of the things that were included in Drupal 8 at the time. Mobile first, HTML5, rich text editor, views and ctools are both in core. We have configuration management, although it's different from what Drupal 8 shows. Many of the field types that were included in Drupal 8 have also been included in Backdrop. The file entity, we have a media browser, but different than Drupal 8, admin views, page preview, email registration. A lot of things, we took a lot of the benefits of Drupal 8, but left them out. There's over 75 plus modules that have been included in part or entirety in Backdrop core. Well, before I go on to that, I mean, if there are any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. I just had a thought that escaped me, so I'll just move along. In terms of the contrib space, one of the benefits of Backdrop is that it's kept all of the Drupal 7 APIs, and so porting modules to Backdrop is much easier than porting them to modern Drupal. We have been some modules can be some simple modules can be ported in an hour. Much more complex modules obviously take a lot more time. This is a list of the top 100 Drupal modules, and all of the green, blue ones have sort of been included in core. The green check marks have already been ported. Some of them, other ones are underway. We have sort of partial ports, and some of them are just no longer necessary. But you know, of a lot of the most popular modules on Drupal.org, you're going to find them. We have over 1,000. We use GitHub to manage all of our projects, and we have over 1,000 projects for Backdrop in GitHub, and we get new ones every week. There are new modules ported. Only 800 of those projects, although that's still a large number, have official releases. So there's over 200 projects that don't have official releases, although some of those, they might be something in the Drupal world like an experimental module, where sometimes they work, but the maintainer just doesn't have the confidence to release them yet. Some of the important modules that have been released, and I'm a little embarrassed here because the maintainer, well, UberCart, organic groups and paragraphs are some big ones that people ask us a lot about. Like, is that available? Those are all available for Backdrop. Panels, the module itself is not, but we built most, one of the biggest changes between Drupal 7 and Backdrop is that a lot of panels functionality has been kind of built in to Backdrop core. So we have a layout system that really uses panels that's part of Backdrop core. And this was one of the biggest divergences from modern Drupal. It's also one of the biggest things to sort of get used to. You know, if you go from a Drupal 7 site to a Backdrop site, you know, 80 or 90% of everything is going to look very familiar to you. The layout system, unless you use panels, is going to look different. And even if you use panels, it's going to look very different because we didn't just import the module into Backdrop, but kind of rebuilt it in a way and changed the UI. So it looks very different. You won't recognize panels directly, but you'll recognize the functionality. And I mentioned, at least earlier, display suites I mentioned here, it doesn't have an official release, but the maintainer was in the room with us a little while ago. I don't know if he's still here, Joseph. He's told me that he uses it on sites and that it's pretty stable. So, but it's not, some of the features haven't been ported, but a lot of them have. So those were just some of the bigger complex modules that I wanted to sort of highlight that have been ported or in the process of being ported. Backdrop CMS is faster than Drupal 7 because one of the things, part of the port of Drupal 7 or part of the port of Backdrop, and one of the reasons for it was that, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, Backdrop chose to sort of have a more clearly defined and narrower focus than what the Drupal community had, which allowed us to strip out a lot of things from Drupal, strip out a lot of Drupal things in Backdrop that just didn't meet our audience. And also, we've made a number of changes, and Backdrop itself runs faster than Drupal 7, and certainly faster than Drupal, modern Drupal, which has gotten a lot more complex. One of the real focuses we have is on usability. So we have a special UX meeting every 2 weeks where we talk about usability issues in the core. I'm not exactly sure how this number was come up with, but this is a number that we use a lot. Over 600 user experience improvements, which I have no doubt about. Personally, I'm not, I don't consider myself sort of a hardcore coder, but I have made numerous sort of usability improvement or, pull requests that have been merged into Backdrop that just make things easier to use or clarify. I know when I switch between the modern Drupal sort of admin interface and the Backdrop interface, I'm much more comfortable in the Backdrop interface. It just feels simpler and easier to use. So a big change in Backdrop over Drupal has been philosophy. We actually have a page, a philosophy page on our website. The project is governed by a project management committee. And again, at least one other PMC member is here on the call with me. I'm on the call as well as Andy, Jen, Greg, and Olaf. And rather than Backdrop being owned by any individual, the trademark and management there's no benevolent dictator or anything like that. It's a committee that manages and makes all of the major decisions. Backdrop CMS has a mission statement that Backdrop CMS enables people to build highly customizable websites affordably through collaboration and open source software. And that's elaborated a little bit upon our 7 principles. Easier updates. The big thing, the primary motivation, I think, for Backdrop CMS was the complexity of upgrading to modern Drupal and the fact that a lot of sites just weren't going to benefit from that. And we wanted to have a way forward that was simpler and easier than what it was going to be to move to Drupal 8. There is still an upgrade process. It's not seamless, although for simple sites, it can be pretty easy. The other thing was simplicity. There's a lot of folks that learn to code by working on their Backdrop sites. And a lot of the changes in the way Drupal, modern Drupal is the code base is their modern best practices that professional developers use that were major changes in the way the code was written, and they're great for developers, but they're not. But they're very difficult for a lot of Backdrop or former Drupal 7 users to adopt and to understand. We're trying to, when we make it a point when adding things to core, to keep the code as simple as we can, so that as many people as possible can use it. We're only focusing on features that benefit the majority. So we're not adding a lot of fringe features for really large sites or whatever. We want to add features that are going to benefit, like we often talk about, I think, the 80% rule, which is less of a rule and more of a guideline. But it's like, is adding this feature to core going to affect most of our users, improve it, or or not. And we don't want core to become bloated with things that are really for narrow use cases. Extensibility, we obviously, like Drupal, want to keep it up extendable and easy for a contrib space to add features. A lot of, the things that don't meet the 80% use case can go into contrib space, right? It's not that we don't want to add those features, but those are not added to core. We add those through contrib. Security, obviously, keeping people safe. We want performance, and we want people to be able to install Backdrop on shared hosting, like a lot of Drupal 7 sites were, and is not always possible with modern Drupal. We have a release on time. We do 3 releases a year. We've done 20 with new features. So every 4 months, there's a new release of Backdrop CMS that adds new features. There are bug fix and security releases in the interim. And again, I think we're working on our 25th, I believe, on time release every 4 months. And of course, the freedom, I guess there's 8 principles, the freedom to remain open source. I mentioned security there. We have our own security team, and we collaborate with the Drupal security team because the code base is so similar to Drupal 7. Most Drupal 7 security issues also affect Backdrop. And we coordinate with them. I believe that there were Drupal 7 security releases for both Backdrop and Drupal 7 yesterday. And that's not uncommon. Oftentimes, Drupal 8 security issues that don't affect, or modern Drupal security issues oftentimes don't affect Backdrop, but most Drupal 7 does. Where to find the community? We do all, as I mentioned before, we do all of our work in GitHub. So you can find the core repository and all of the contributors repositories on GitHub. On Backdrop, I didn't have a link here for backdrop.org, which I should. Backdrop.org has all of the, you can download all the code from backdrop.org. But if you're interested in contributing, forking, or, playing with the code, we have GitHub repositories and issue queues for everything. And a couple of my colleagues just entered the basic backdrop.org link in the issue queue. We do have an active forum, which generally, if you post a note in our forum, you'll get a reply within a few hours or a day. We're pretty good about that. So please, if you have questions about Backdrop, look us up there. Oh, I do have the main site there. Good. And Zulip, yeah. We have an open chat channel, much like Slack. Zulip is another open source tool that we use for chat communication. And I'm going to actually click on this link because I just want you to see that anybody can just click on the link and read some of the discussions, not all of them, that are going on in our chat channel. And if you sign up, you can participate in these chat discussions. And you'll see my face there quite a bit, as well as some of the other folks in the room with me today. We do have a Twitter account, and we have a Mastodon account, which I think is going to show up later on in the slide deck. We do have an event coming up, which I will mention later. Some of the important differences between Backdrop and modern Drupal. One, I've already talked a little bit about the layout system. Everything, if you're familiar with panels, it's something like that. We have different pages, different types of pages have different layouts. We have layout templates, and everything is placed in blocks on the layout. It's the biggest change, especially if you haven't used panels, but it's the biggest change to get used to. Most people that come to Backdrop, that report that the thing that it takes the most time to get used to, just because of the level of difference, is our layout system. Backdrop handles, we do have configuration management in Backdrop CMS, but it's different. In modern Drupal, config is still stored in the database, but you can export it to text file, or I believe it's JSON or is it JSON files to move it. We actually store YAML files. That's right. In modern Drupal, they use YAML files. For Backdrop, we use JSON files to store and read config all the time. So it works a little bit different. If you're a heavy user of config management, you'll have to get a little bit used to that. But it's the workflows, I think, are pretty similar. The other big difference is the simpler workflow. A lot of people that come to Backdrop really got hung up on modern Drupal with the whole composer workflow. If they're not doing a lot of development and just don't have a need for composer other than to manage their one site, sort of learning and adapting to composer is a big deal. And I know I went through that myself. I certainly got used to and used composer on modern Drupal projects, but I appreciate, I don't think that I would ever have become a Drupal user if I had entered into modern Drupal, because I think the workflow is sufficiently complicated that it would have been a barrier for me. I was very much a beginner, and Backdrop, we have kind of the same workflows for the most part as Drupal 7 site. You can build a Drupal 7 site without command line tools at all if you want. Most active developers do use command line tools. We have a tool called B, which is similar to Drush for developers. There have been some users that have played with putting Backdrop into Composer, so it's not impossible to use Composer with Backdrop, but very few of us feel the need to do that. We're able to manage it without that. Yeah, there's a question about splitting config by different environments, and yes, that is definitely possible. A little bat about how you might make some choices between Backdrop and modern Drupal. These are some sort of criteria that I think about when I'm meeting with a client and talking about what a Drupal 7 client, what their future is, what is their budget. And we have an example later, but I think it's pretty clear by now that modern Drupal upgrades are more expensive than Backdrop, and a lot of clients just can't afford it. The complexity of your project, there are really ambitious projects that need a lot of the features that really modern Drupal was designed for. And depending on the complexity of your project, you may really need or want Drupal, modern Drupal, or the converse, which is the complexity of your project might be quite simple. And there are some exceptions, and I'm going to talk about one of those in a minute. Maintenance budget as well. The ongoing overhead of maintaining a modern Drupal site has been reported by quite a few people to be more than Backdrop, partly just because of the overhead, the tools, and that if you're a small nonprofit that has somebody that is managing, you're much more likely to be able to find somebody on staff or a freelancer that can manage your site sort of on a low budget without having to worry about Composer and a lot of the overhead that comes with modern Drupal. Certainly something else you're going to factor in is the need for specific modules. There are some modules, I didn't mention them here, like commerce. If you've got a Drupal 7 commerce site and you really want to preserve that, we don't have the commerce module for Backdrop. We have UberCart if you're building a new site and you want commerce features or e-commerce. UberCart right now is the primary option that we have for you, but there's been talk of porting commerce at some point in the future, but that hasn't happened. Another one of the projects, I'm in the last stages of a Drupal 7 to Drupal modern Drupal upgrade, where one of the determining factors, I ruled it out as a Backdrop candidate very quickly because it's a pretty ambitious and complex project, and it needs the domain access module. They're using one database. For those who haven't used the domain access module, it's an amazing module. It allows you to maintain multiple domains or different sites using a single code base and database. It's different than multi-site because you've just got one database, but you're assigning your content to different domains. And this is a website that has at least 7 different domains that it's distributing its content through. And the domain access module it's like organic groups or some of or UberCart, and then it has a whole bunch of other modules. It's not just like an issue reporting one module. There's all kinds of modules that add functionality to it. And as a team, we just did not have the budget to port all of that to Backdrop. I would love to see that module available for Backdrop, but it's not right now. And so that ruled out Backdrop as an option. There we go. Laren is just telling us that there's other interest in porting domain access, and I definitely would be interested in that as well. But it wasn't going to happen in time for this project. The context, other things. Do you have other Drupal sites? What kind of support resources do you have? Do you have full-time Drupal 8 developers on staff? If you do, then modern Drupal might be a more logical thing for you. So those were some of the criteria, specifically like why you might go to Backdrop. You're happy with your Drupal 7 site, but you need to move it somewhere, but you're not looking for a lot of new features. You're not looking for an upgrade, right? Whereas contrary, if you're planning to rebuild your site completely and add lots of new features and it's a complex site, going to modern Drupal might be a really good decision. But if you're fundamentally happy with what your site is doing, why pay more to port it to modern Drupal when you can get what you got already in Backdrop? And I'm going to mention the Stanford example, which Laren also works for Atten that did that in a minute, because they're a really interesting case study and they have some great resources out there. So you want all of the same functionality as you have now, but maybe a little bit more. You like a simpler editor or administration experience. I mean, ongoing improvements to your software is going to happen with both. This is a key one, and this comes from this. We've learned a lot about this from the Stanford experiment. Well, not experiment, the Stanford migration. If you have a lot of custom code that you're just happy with, right? You don't need to rebuild it. Backdrop might be an option for you because actually, is it the next slide? I'm going to jump ahead a bit because I keep alluding to this. Atten Design Group moved 2 Stanford sites to Backdrop CMS. Laren, who's in the room with us right now, works for Atten, and you can ping him if you have questions. But these are not simple sites. So a lot of the assumption about which sites are best for Backdrop are what we talk about, sort of simple or mid-range sites. These were very active sites with lots of users. But the key thing here was lots of custom code. These were sites that were under active development. They were currently adding new features all the time and building them out. And they were looking at spending, there's a link here to an article that they wrote on the backdrop.org site, but they've also done several other articles as well as several webinars and recorded presentations. So if you want to learn more about this, their experience, they've got some great resources out there. Just Google Backdrop CMS and Stanford, and you'll find links to these resources. But basically, they were looking at like 4,000 hours to port these 2 sites to modern Drupal, and part of that was rewriting all of their custom code, which was extensive. And whereas it was moving to Backdrop was simply a matter of refactoring it, and they said they reported that the entire process took them only about 500 hours instead of the 4,000 hours, and that they saved hundreds of thousands of dollars on that upgrade. Plus, they were able to get back to their active development much quicker. So I'm going to go back. Yeah, that we were on this point here. Agree with some people sort of have moved to Backdrop for the philosophical reasons, the focus on the small or medium-sized nonprofits, the simplicity and of the code. We talked about that. what are some obvious reasons to move to modern Drupal? As we talked about before, you need specific modules which just aren't available for Backdrop. And this is where I mentioned commerce module or domain access are two. And this can always change if you want to move to Backdrop and you have the resources. These modules could be ported to Backdrop. They haven't happened yet. If you have a team of developers that work with Composer and you love it, that might be a check mark in the behavior of Drupal 8. I had a fairly small. I'm seeing more discussion in the chat about domain access. I love it. I've used domain access on other Drupal 7 projects as well. I know there are more out there, and we'll love to see them ported into Backdrop. I had a couple of different sites that I ported to Drupal 9 or modern Drupal recently for different reasons. One of them was a small site, which I think could easily have been ported to Backdrop, but the client just had been using Drupal for years, was really comfortable with the Drupal community, and they just wanted the security of the Drupal community that they knew. And Backdrop was different for them, and I respected that decision on their part. So I gave them a pitch for Backdrop and why it might work for them, and in the end, they decided that they'd prefer we stick with Drupal. So that's certainly another option, and there are others. We mentioned what kinds of sites are upgrading, simple sites. If you've got a really simple brochure type site, you can upgrade your site in a day. Medium sites take longer. We've done a number of those. And then the highly customized sites with lots of custom code. That's the Stanford example that I just talked about. So there are a number of different we sometimes talk about the Drupal community talks a lot about ambitious sites. This is a term that's been thrown out around a lot. There's no reason you can't build very ambitious sites with Backdrops, but depending on your specific use case, there are other factors that might lead you one way or another. So by no means is Backdrop anything you could build in. Very ambitious sites were built in Drupal 7, and pretty much anything that was built in Drupal 7 can be built in Backdrop. We talked about this already. At this point, actually, I'm going to try to wrap up pretty quick, and I don't know that I want to talk. I borrowed parts of this slide deck from another presentation that goes deeper into the upgrade process, and I'm going to skim over this pretty quickly. So hopefully we have more time for questions. I also could have a site ready to spin up that we can actually look at a Backdrop site quick. One of the things when I hadn't done any Drupal 6 to 7 upgrades, so I was sort of new to all of this. And when I first got into this, the distinction between upgrade and migrate kind of threw me. And I think it's an important thing to think about if you're embarking on one of these decisions. Moving to Drupal, you could do an upgrade process from Drupal 6 to 7. From Drupal 7 to modern Drupal, you pretty much have to migrate your data. You're really building a new website and you're pulling the data into it. I've learned that in some simple use cases, it looks a lot like an upgrade when you do that, but it's a different process. An upgrade is really where you just sort of replace the old code with the new code and run a script on the database, and the database gets updated to work with the new code. And that was sort of how Drupal 6 to Drupal 7 upgrades work. There is an upgrade. When you're moving to Backdrop, you can do either. You can build a new site and migrate your data into it, or you can run the upgrade process, and that's that, like if you're doing it a one-day upgrade, that's going to be mean that's the process that works. Really, is you're kind of replacing the code base, running the upgrade script, and then checking to see how it works. Very seldom is that going to go perfectly the first time, but on pretty well, even on not simple sites. I did a site that had 10 different content types and many thousands of nodes, and not so many users. We just ran the upgrade process, and I would say like 95% of everything worked. The big thing that won't work is your theme. So when if you're upgrading to Drupal, upgrading from Drupal to Backdrop, again, this is taken from this other presentation. kind of the steps. Research what's necessary, prepare your Drupal 7 site, do the upgrade, and then make adjustments. And part of each step is like reviewing your theme, reviewing your modules. If you're going to try to keep your themes, do not port directly, although there recently has been a module released. I'm forgetting the name of it right now. I think it's the Drupal 7 compatibility theme. And it's a theme for D7 compatible. It's a theme for Backdrop that is supposed to help make your Drupal 7 site work on Backdrop easier. I have not tested that myself. I'm skeptical that it's going to, in some cases, it might sort of work out of the box. In a lot of cases, you still probably have to do some tweaking. But one of the biggest steps for a lot of sites in moving to Backdrop is the fact that they have to kind of rebuild their theme. Greg put a link to the D7 compatible theme in the chat. The same things with layouts. You have to sort of go through your modules, figure out what your modules are. Do you still need them? Are they available in Backdrop or not? We have a Drupal module called the Backdrop. Greg's about to help me out. Yes, and somebody pointed out that in previous, upgrading from Drupal 6 to 7, you also had to redo your theme, and obviously you have to do that when going to modern Drupal, right? Drupal 7 themes don't work in modern Drupal; they're completely different. So that's not unusual, and certainly the theming experience is well. Actually, I should take that back. Parts of the theming experience are very similar to Drupal 7. Parts of it are kind of different because of the layout system. Give us a link to the Drupal upgrade status module in chat. That's for Greg. Part of the change in theming is that because of the layout system, themes are primarily CSS skins that you work on your website. There's much less need for templating because you do a lot of that in the layout system. And in Backdrop, or in Drupal, for example, you have the modules folder and you have the themes folder. In Backdrop, you have the modules folder, the themes folder, and the layouts folder. And layouts are like a third element to think about. Very often, though, you can use core layouts. You don't have to worry about that, but that's something to do a little research on if you're moving. I'm going to just skip over these steps. I don't think most of you are ready for this, and if you do have questions about the upgrade process, ask them. I'm going to wrap up here, and hopefully, please start asking questions now, and so we can spend some time answering questions. If we don't get to your questions today, I have to pitch this, which is starting early in the sort of pandemic days, we started doing 3 times a year an online event for Backdrop called Backdrop Live. And this is an unconference model, where you can just bring your topic. There's no session selection committee. This is the website. You can register now. We have the next Backdrop Live is a week from tomorrow. And we basically put up a schedule, and we have a bunch of topics. We have started scheduling sort of a beginner track, which is fixed, but then we have all kinds of open spots. And we basically the original idea for this was 3 hours of sessions, 3-hour break, 3 hours of sessions, 3 hours break, and we were going with a 24-hour global session schedule. We don't get a lot of sort of really late night participation, but this goes for a little over 24 hours. And if you want to talk about a Backdrop, if you want to ask questions about Backdrop, feel free to come and either attend the current discussions, and these are very interactive. As I say, they're more discussions than they are presentations, or you can do what one of our active community members likes to do, and I'm going to call it out. She came to a meeting yesterday and was asking a bunch of questions about UberCart, and I said, well, let's put that on the schedule for Backdrop Live. You bring all your questions, and she's done this before and gotten great response. So she comes not prepared to like teach people about UberCart, but Diane is coming to get her UberCart questions answered, and this will generally work pretty well, and people should feel free to do that. So sign up for Backdrop Live, bring your questions there, and. I'm ahead of you, Greg. Greg just asked me to show the backdrop, the demo button. On the front page of backdrop.org, we have a demo button. And I'm going to open up an actual Backdrop site right now. You can just go to click the demo button, create a sandbox. This uses the tugboat tool created by Lullabot to spin up a Backdrop site that's available to you for 24 hours. So please do go here, spin up a Backdrop site. This just takes about 1 minute, less than that. There it is, it's already done. Actually, I didn't need a new tab for that. But wow, the only difference that I know of between this process and the other is normally the process would take you to the home page. The spinning this up takes you to our dashboard, which is one of the new features we have that I was involved in getting implemented into Backdrop, and I'm proud of. I really like the dashboard, but anyways, you'll see a lot of things you recognize in terms of like the menu looks pretty similar to Drupal 7. A lot of the same options, content types, fields. If you go to the views menu, you're going to see almost exactly what you're used to in Drupal 7, and for that matter, Drupal, modern Drupal. Things like views and content types, work pretty similar between the two. I think it's for me though, when I go back and forth between modern Drupal and this, I love our admin user interface much better. I know that there are some contrib admin themes for Drupal, modern Drupal, that make it much better as well. But anyways, I think we can look around the demo site some more. If we don't have any questions, I might just spend the last few minutes looking around the demo site, but please put your questions in the chat. I'm going to go back. Yep. Slides, yeah, and then these are the questions. So that's it. Anyone? I think the normal way they do things here.
Yeah, but feel free to unmute if you want to.
At this stage, that's fair. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I love questions. I'm going to go back and just sort of browse around the site a little bit. One of the things we added recently was a card content type. So this is out of the box. Gosh, I'm not sure if modern Drupal has added any content types, but in Drupal 7, and great idea, Greg. In Drupal 7 and in Backdrop up until recently, page and post were the two default content types. And we added a card content type, partly because we've also added things like nodeless or the rabbit hole module was Drupal 7, I think, where you can have content that doesn't have, a user access node. Well, some of my Backdrop friends are suggesting things I show you, so let's do that. Let's go to the modern Drupal is getting very close to releasing a project browser, which we have had something in Backdrop for quite a while, which is from within the UI for Backdrop. You can go to install new modules, and you can see all of the modules on backdrop.org. These are modules with an official release. We can type in something like views and search and see all of the views related modules that are available for Backdrop. You're going to recognize a lot of these as ports of Drupal 7. However, there are some new modules. And actually on this demo site, you can install modules. So you can spin up a demo site on Tugboat. You can install modules. And so even if you have, if you've already evaluated Backdrop, but you just want to evaluate a module, a great way to do it is using Tugboat here, where you can, again, browse the modules, download them, and install them right through the UI. We've just installed that module. Or same thing with themes. Install new themes. The theme library for Backdrop is not huge. I think we've got about 20, 25 themes. Like Drupal, I think a lot of the developers create custom modules for their themes for their clients. I'm going to go ahead. Actually, they're listed in order of popularity, so I'm better to be on the previous page. Something like Stasi, we can add that to the queue. Oh, something weird's happening. You know what? We're running out of time, so this again normally works just like the module. You add it to the queue, add it to the installation queue. Yep, I don't know what's happening here. Let's try a different one, lateral. No, that's not working for some reason on this demo site. The layouts. This is an error from the thing. This is the layouts page. Fairly recently, we added some nice help text to help people understand. This again is something that takes a little getting used to. We have, by default, Backdrop comes with a default homepage layout, a layout for the admin pages, and a default layout for all other pages. And then you can easily create layouts for, say, just posts, or for just pages, or if you have a special event content type, you can create a layout. And then for then each layout, you can go into the manage and place blocks. And we have a nice layout editor. You can drag and drop your blocks. These are the various blocks that are available that you can just drop into any particular region. If any of my Backdrop friends want me, if they can think of something, we do have, where is the, in layout templates, we have actually kind of a layout builder where you can create your own layout. It comes with just 3 rows, and you can do things like, does this say? There must be something going on with this demo site. I've not had this problem before, but in the configure, you can break, a particular region into multiple columns. We can add rows. Yeah, I don't know if, let's just try clearing the cache. There we go. So I just had to clear the cache. Anybody recognize that problem? So within any region, we can rename it. We can change the add different numbers of columns in different configurations. So you can sort of build your own template through the layout UI. A lot of this would have been done in sort of theme templates before, and then you can place blocks. If I go back to the home page, or let's go to the default layout, in any individual block, you can hit configure, and we have visibility conditions. So you can make that block only available on the home page, have it available for certain languages, certain paths, or certain roles, permission. So you can make blocks, all of this is right in the in core, in Backdrop core. Well, we're reaching the end of our scheduled time. I would say I'm available to answer more questions, but we haven't had many.
We have
Thank you.
Let me just do this quick. In the room right now, hopefully I won't miss anybody. Laren, Joseph, and Greg are the three. Andy joined us as well. These are all active backdrop contributors that if you know any of them, feel free to ask them questions. Luke, is Luke still here? Yep. Well, Luke was here. I don't know if I see his name right now. Okay, reach out to me if, again,
Okay.
I'm going to go back to my contact info slide. And then if anybody wants to jot that down. But thanks, everyone. I think we'll just wrap this up.
Yes. Thank you, Tim. Hope to have you come speak again.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. If anybody's still here needs my contact info, ask me. I didn't get the slide up. We have weekly development meetings every week that